Come on back. 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 If you still talking on the wall, you should come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Y'all say trust Black women. Black women are telling you to come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. The quicker you do it, the quicker we move. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. I'm gonna be democratic about it for 2 more seconds, and then I'm gonna start shaming people. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Hey. Y'all should start doing it too, so they start doing it. Okay. Come on back. Come on back. Come on, Vince Warren, sit down. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. I am not opposed to walking in the back and coming and getting you. Come on back. Come on back. Come on. All right. If you can hear me clap once, you can hear me clap 2 times. If you can hear me clap 3 times, if you can hear me say shh. Thank you.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a little report out from your discussions, from your tables. And we have, 10 minutes for that? Is that right? 10 minutes for that. So you want to set some guidelines on that?
Yes. So how many people remember about 15 minutes ago when I said, let's not start at the top. Let's go deep quick. You remember that? If you remember, you got to talk to me. All right. So these are not the things that you think everybody already knows, but it's a good soundbite. These are the things that you were like, yes, this we should get deeper on. Or, oh, you know what? I really disagreed with this. Or, oh man, this is really deep. We should make sure this gets flagged, right? We're going to try to use this to get even deeper than we were in the panel. Does that make sense? All right. Does it? All right, cool. So.
And because we only have 10 minutes, that means.
It's not the thesis. It's not the dissertation. It's the heart of the statement. Yes. And again, because of the centralization of democracy, we will shut it down. So let's get it out. Let's get to
roving mics.
And if you have the roving mics, can you just wave so folks can see who's going to be coming towards them very quickly?
Is there a roving mic? Well, we have mics up here. If somebody wants to rove them.
Yeah.
Okay,
there we go.
Cool. All right.
There's the team.
Great.
There's one over
here. Okay,
here.
so raise your hand if you'd like to.
And we're gonna do this quick.
Conversation.
Yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
Stand up for me, love. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And somebody else raise their hand on this side so that we can start. We can get that in the.
I got you.
Stand up, please. Okay. We got a mic here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna take my mask off a little.
No, we can hear you just talking to the mic.
No. Mask on?
We sharing mics, you know.
I dig it.
Put the mic in your face though.
So one of the issues that I feel like all of us identified was apathy and misinformation. One of the things that I feel like we need to do is to occupy that space with our own information and to make sure that we can get information out to our brothers and sisters who may not be in this room or who may not be online as much as we are, or may not be as active in these social circles as much as we are, and give them tools so that when they go into other communities where disinformation and other sorts of information goes, that they can have something that they can hold on to and they can combat that with, and that they have a sense of community with us.
Yes.
in that regard. So
thank you so much. I want to turn it over to this comrade here.
Yes, I agree. Kind of to go off of that, one of the things that I thought in our group kind of briefly discussed was just the education aspect of it, especially when it comes to this liberation movement. I can speak from personal experience. I have just recently started to try to educate myself and learn more about it, but I know my friends and myself could really benefit from some type of series or somewhere where we can go to where we can get more information about this movement, and even in terms of different examples in the states of some things that we may want to implement on a larger scale, just knowing that something may be happening in a different state or a different city, just getting that information out. So I was thinking of maybe some series on YouTube or social media where it's accessible and we can go back and reference it. I thought might be cool.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate you.
And I'm just gonna take a mic prior, I'm just gonna use this for a second. Check out How Cops Get Off. It's on YouTube.
Shameless plug.
It's on YouTube. It's got its own channel. It's videos. That's the Schoolhouse Rock of Policing
It's
by
so good.
Advancement Project. So come on, check that out.
While she's plugging,
Okay.
who else wants
Who's
to shout
got- who else
something
we got?
out?
Anybody? Come
Raise
on,
your hand
y'all.
for me.
We gotta be dreaming and having.
All right,
fun.
right here and right here. Can y'all
Yep.
stand for me?
Yep.
Just so the mic can get around
Thank
to you.
you.
Thank you so much. And whoever gets it first can kick us off.
Hey, y'all, we had a bunch of brilliant minds here and a bunch of brilliant thoughts. But in terms of the threats, one of the big ones that comes to mind is the cult of individualism and how I got to get mine, you got to get yours has taken over from our historical and much more beneficial collective mindset. And in terms of strategies, looking around at who's not here, who's not at the table. And it's like, I love young people, but me and my 40+ crowd, we always want to advocate for having more of the seasoned folk around us, and not just the seasoned academics, but the seasoned activists who have been doing the work for decades before us, and the ones who really do know about collective power from, feeding each other out each other's kitchens and things like that, and building from there.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about how some threats can be opportunities in other areas that have been historically unmovable. So the threat we were thinking about was climate change. An opportunity created by climate change is that there are people and resources around climate change right now who have not given a darn about Black people in prisons and things like plantation prisons and people who are doing farm work in horrific conditions in the Deep South. As part of forced labor, and the possibility that they might actually care in this moment, not because it's slavery, but because it's related to climate change, and we might be able to create a nexus there for a different conversation.
Word up. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a few more. Just raise your hand for me so we can see you. Somebody in this little back corner would be delicious. Somebody in this little back corner would be delicious. Would be excellent. Give me a couple more. Because y'all was working, Ray. I'm about to volunteer somebody. Yep, right here. Right here. Stand up for me.
So we talked at our group about how the pandemic has left a lot of decay and gaps in the systems and institutions that we don't trust, which means these are opportunities for us to take land that has opened up in the buildings downtown, take opportunities in political office, and take power, and don't let anybody tell us that just because we never had it before doesn't mean it can't be ours. And we need to be pinpointing those and taking them now.
You got claps from the Jaribu Hill. Sounds like a keeper. All right, couple more. Just raise your hand for me. Yep, stand for me so they can see you.
Hi. An idea that came up, or a theme that came up at our table a lot, was like local to global. And so there were two really good ones. One, we were talking about, like, with climate change, kind of what was mentioned earlier, with land grabs. So in Boston right now, there's a group working on how Harvard University is doing land grabs in the Boston area and literally like stealing land from people in Cambridge and Boston and displacing them, but they're also grabbing land in Brazil. And they do this under like the same shell company. And they do this because as like climate change ramps up, as we lose, as like supply chain issues are exacerbated due to like climate change and like our failing economy, as these things are exacerbated in the West, land becomes a commodity that these like financial superpowers want to put money and stock in, and then they invest in it, and then people get displaced, and then it's harder to organize them. So there's this group in Boston that like brings together organizers and people that are getting displaced in Boston and Brazil, and then like works together. And then if Sarah would like to share, she had a really great mutual aid idea that started in Western Massachusetts, and they connected with like organizers in Palestine. But if she doesn't want to share, that was wonderful, and you all should talk to her about it.
Sure, I can share. So I was thinking about, I'm from Western Massachusetts, which is a very kind of polarized economically and racially region. And during the COVID pandemic, we built a regional mutual aid network that partnered neighborhood networks in wealthier areas of the region that had been historically invested in with neighborhoods that had been divested from, deliberately abandoned by the state. So that we were still building neighborhood power and mutual aid networks that were very locally grounded in the real conditions that people were experiencing, but facilitating partnerships across the region to facilitate the redistribution that we know needs to happen across those lines of like state abandonment and investment. And we've seen that happen. That can happen across international lines too. Like a mutual aid group at my college connected with one in Palestine, and then we built that partnership there. So really creating locally grounded work and then partnering with groups in other places to do that too.
Thank you. Thanks. We have time for two more. One, no?
Okay, you gonna have to, I'm gonna get in trouble, but I'm gonna let
Oh.
you go
We're gonna let you go.
real
'cause-
quick. It's gotta be
okay.
tight, because I'm already in trouble.
Oh, oops.
I think thinking about long-term vision and moving with power and vision is just detaching from capital and accepting that 9 to 5 is just a 9 to 5. A job's a job, money is just money, especially with people with privilege like us who have a doctorate already. Having a job isn't really a big deal. We can just find another one, and we should not be living to work. We should just be making the money and then throwing it around. So yeah, detaching from capital to move forward to another system, because why not live in a post-capitalistic vision?
Thank you. Thank you.
I got you. Thank you. We can take a couple of more. I got permission. Shout out to the Apple Watch and the text. I appreciate you.
Any
Yes.
others?
Any others?
We have someone over here.
Nah, I want to keep it.
You want
yeah.
this side of the room? Is there
Anybody on
over
this
here
side?
Before we, no,
No,
nothing stood out? No?
nothing stood out. Y'all was talking real long.
Oh, hey.
Stand for me.
Hey.
Thank you,
There
my
we go.
dear.
Thank you. I think something that stood out to me that I read as I was going from each paper, and then something that someone said earlier about the 40 and over crowd, and a young lady in the front said about education is really empowering young people to feel like they can be a part of the movement in a way that isn't divided, right? So a lot of times I feel like there was something that said investment in youth, collective youth power. I think sometimes young people get a rap that they're not as radical as the movement needs them to be. And so I think really investing in educating young folks, even if the way in which they show up, the way in which they are sharing their strategies, their skills and powers doesn't look like the way that it's been done in the past, really being able to invest in the new ways that young people think. I saw something that was a threat that said social media. And I was like, that's an opportunity, right? And so really being able to both honor and respect strategies that are different and be able to bring people from both sides of the table who maybe look at something like young people or social media as a threat, and bring people who look at it as opportunity. And how can we meet in the middle to be able to mobilize and use that for the greater good of the movement? So,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
If you were one of our speakers, can you just stand real quick? Just if you were one of the people that just hit the mic, can you stand for me? And can we just give it up for the people that were willing to step into vulnerability, to step into their leadership, to share their voices with us? We appreciate your service.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so the two of us are just going to do a quick little wrap up of like some threads. First, I want to start with this. What is a threat? On the flip side could be the opportunity, right? When we think about it's both like the social media, but it's also the pandemic. Because like I think about the lawyers who brought cases around COVID to get people out of jail and prison with the idea that if we could show that we can get folks out, we can make a hit to cash bail, we can make a hit to the system so that we could keep people out and not do that anymore. And so being able to think about how we flip things. The other thing that stands out to me is that the system was never meant for us. If you start with that and stop thinking about, I'm overwhelmed by the fact that the Supreme Court just, I mean, you could be overwhelmed. I mean, or you could be upset and angry, but that's not, we can't end there, right? our work continues regardless of what they are doing. The other thing is, I would say two more things. One is, I'm just going to repeat it. If you are not supporting building power in communities of color, you are not doing movement lawyering. And that's power, not empower, because we do not empower people. People have their own power, and it's not up to lawyers to empower Black people or people of color. So don't use those terms, the empower. Oh God, don't use that. Okay. And then lastly, I just want to pinpoint something you said, right? Like, I just want to be in a moment where I don't have to think about all the bad things. Yeah. And there's something that you always say, like you tell funders, fund us like you want us to win. Yep. And I want us to dream like we want to win. And that we are starting from thinking about winning instead of starting from a deficit position. What are we envisioning and what are we dreaming about? Get this stuff out your head. Get the constraints off your law school brain and start thinking about what we want. So I'm going to hand it off to you to bring it on home.
Yeah. I'm curious how many of you have ever been asked like what you want, what you desire. If you have, just like raise your hand. What do you want? What do you desire? Wow, that's what I mean. And you can imagine that if those of us in this room of privilege have not been asked, what like my gangster disciples brothers been asked, or what the working class folks where we live have been asked. But that's my soapbox. I want to sort of read back to you things that I feel like I heard a lot. And if you agree with me, I want you to affirm it. Okay. If you disagree with me, I'm going to give you an opportunity to like let me know that too, because I think like we sometimes move to alignment really fast, when actually there might be like some disagreement, and disagreement in itself is not a bad thing. It might actually sharpen us to get to that innovative thing that we need to do. So I want to test a little. Is that okay? All right. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do it anyway. So I heard a lot about like education in the room, and I have to say education first because I work at school, right? But like I heard people are saying like they're thirsty for models. They're thirsty for case studies where things are working and where things haven't. The people were listening to Dimitri talk about like all of these places, and Tinji, all of these places globally where people have been grappling with things that we are starting to see come quickly towards our people, right? So people are looking for education opportunities and to share the privileges they've gotten from being in the academy with movement people to build power. Does that feel right? Okay. Does that feel wrong? Okay. I'm hearing people say that we need to build collectively across our different sectors, across our different demographics, across our ideological differences, that we've got to figure out how to build a united front across our areas of expertise. Does that feel right? Does that feel wrong? Okay. Wait, if it feels wrong, okay. If I took out across different ideologies, would it feel right? Okay, all right. That we need to be intentional about who's in the room while also not being liberal about it. Because just being old don't make you my elder. And just because you're young doesn't mean you're not brilliant, right? And have like a lot of experience. So like what's the intergenerational organizing methodological intervention that we could be making? And that's just one example, that there's a lot of other folks that should be in this room and maybe could be. And I mean that in the both physical sense and our virtual sacred space. Does that feel right? Does that feel wrong? Okay. And that, yeah, I heard the word investment so many times that if I had taken a drink every time, I'd be tipsy. So I'm imagining there's something about redistribution and mutual aid and investment in yourselves and in the communities that you care about and come from. Does that feel right? All right. So I'm hearing that. And then I'm, similarly to what Judy said and what many of you in the crowd said around this threat as opportunities piece, but there was something else that I feel like is a nuance that should be raised, that I feel like was maybe the spirit and sentiment behind what you were saying and thinking, is that there are multiple vacuums. I sometimes call it the beauty of neglect. and the marginalized and targeted communities that we are serving or from and supporting, working with, et cetera. And that it's our turn to fill the vacuum that those gaps have made. Does that feel right to you? Yeah? Does it feel wrong? Does it feel right? Yeah. Say values? Vacuums. So for example, I can't remember who it was, but it was on this side, I feel like, that was talking about the vacuums that COVID created, right? And infrastructure. And that there's, you know, I would say that there's like Republicans running for seats unopposed, or there's, you know, no concentrated effort for the organized left to actually go and get faith communities. There's so many gaps that are created for so many reasons, sometimes because of neglect and sometimes because we're being ultra left. Multiple truths, right? So there's opportunities in those vacuums for us to step in, or other people are going to fill the vacuum. That's what I mean. Yeah. Yep. So it could be infrastructure, it could be communities, it could be a lot of things. So I think that's another thing that I felt like I heard across the panel and in the room. So that's what I've got.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So clap it up for yourselves because you
Y'all
just
worked.
And we're gonna keep, I think the wall's gonna be up there, so make sure that you see the brilliance of everybody in the room by doing the gallery walk if you haven't. And now we're gonna move, we're gonna bring it local, right? Because we came to St. Louis for a reason.
That's right.
We did. We didn't just say, oh, we want to go see the arch. No. No.
Certainly wasn't the barbecue,
No.
no shade.
No. And the heat.
I was looking for
Mm-mm.
Kayla because I
And the heat. We came here because for many people, this was a spot in which some people actually entered into movement work for the first time. For other people, it was maybe where they got politicized. For other people, we came to support. And a lot has been built since Mike Brown was murdered. And it came through organizing, it came through hard work, it came through people who are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And so we're gonna be having a panel because we wanted to ground ourselves in St. Louis so that you all know that this work actually, we winning right up here, we're winning. And so we're gonna move to that, but first we have a performance.
It's going to be this incredible performer, and their name is Dinah. Dinah, are you here? Oh, come on. Y'all give it up for her as she comes. Come on through. And that'll be shortly followed by some of the most brilliant organizers in the game from St. Louis that are going to be stewarded to you by the magnificent.
And some surprise guests too. With
Yeah,
them,
I just saw a
think,
surprise,
like,
but we're going to give it up for Kayla Reed in a second after this
Okay.
performance. So give it up
Thank
to her one more time as she
Thank
comes.
you. Come on up. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. How we doing today? My name is Dina Dean, and I will be serenading you guys with a couple of original tracks. So hope you enjoy. I actually don't know if I should stand over here. Let me see. Yeah. Is this okay for everyone? You can see me? This is good. All right, let's do it. First song is called Fly, and let's get fly. Thank you for having me, by the way. You guys have been so amazing. Thank you so much for having me. The cause, thank you. I can get fly up a fly, fly up a fly. I can get fly up a fly, fly up a fly. I can get fly up a fly, fly up a fly. I can get fly up a fly. Yeah, yeah. Relax your mind and let it unwind. No time for fight. Just open your eyes, do see the light. Don't hesitate now. There's too much in front of you to take a hit now. Prepare for the worst, but prepare for the best. Cause only your mind holds the curse that you partner with it. I ain't trying to stop you from the light that guides you. I just wanna be the one to guide you, mold you, make sure that you're on a good road. Little did you know I can give life. Oh, I can give life a fly, baby. Yeah, I can give life a fly. Clap your hands if you want to. I can give life a fly, yeah. Ooh, this is the love and the flow that I live by. Just realize what it is and pass the lighter. Don't be shy to get high. Got this green for the get by. Don't hold back on this here fly. Oh, no, no, no. I can get fly. I can get fly. Oh, I can get fly. I can get fly for fly, baby. Got a pack in the bag and a seat on my lap. What you wanna do, baby, you the best. Coming from the east, not the west. Southside got it written on my chest. And you know this is hood love. I just wanna be the one to guide you, mold you, make sure that you're on a good road. Little did you know, baby. I can get fly, I can get fly, I can get fly, I can get fly. Oh, no, 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 no. Float away. Y'all like that?
Yes, appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. Yes, so if you guys would love to follow me, keep up with me, my name is spelled D-Y-N-A, Dina, E-D-Y-N-E, Adine. And that's all social media platforms. You should find me and hashtag Tree Woman singular, and you should also find me. I have one more song for you guys. So let's get into it. Give it up for the technicals back there, taking care of everything, you feel me? They looking out for me. All these, or both of these songs are on streaming platforms. This one's called Take a Chance. Didn't know if you noticed, baby, but it's what you do, yeah, yeah. Couldn't help but to show it, baby, my feelings around you, yeah, 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 yeah. It's like a mental reaction, baby. I get attracted lately. I cannot think about what's been wanting to come out my mouth. Baby, you know it's crazy. Mental reaction, baby. I cannot speak about 11:03. Boy, you take me out from my feet, boy, floating on it. Out in your sea, boy, swimming in your ocean deep, boy. Let's take a chance on romance. We can just vibe out, yeah. No need to rush, let's take a chance, baby. Chance on romance, baby. We can just vibe out, yeah. No need to rush, let's take a chance on romance. We can just vibe out, yeah. No need to rush, let's take a chance, baby. Chance on romance, baby. We can just vibe out. No
jump. We can just vibe out. No need to rush. Hey. Let's take a jump. We can just vibe out. No. No need to rush, baby. This is reaction. This is attraction. And it ain't fatal, baby. You like it. It's so enticing. Touching my navel, what you want to do. Ain't much time left, boo. But we can make it. Yeah. Whoa, whoa. Oh. 11:03, boy, you take me off of my feet, boy, floating on it. Out in your sea, boy, swimming in your ocean deep, boy, 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 no. Let's take a chance on romance, baby. We can just vibe out, yeah. No need to rush, let's take a chance, baby. Chance on romance, baby. We can just vibe out. Let's take a chance on romance, yeah, yeah. We can just vibe out, yeah. No need to rush, let's take a chance, baby. Chance on romance, baby. We can just vibe out. No, 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 no. Let's take a chance. We can just vibe out. No need to rush. Yes, that's it for me.
Thank you guys so much. Thank y'all. This was awesome. I love serenading you guys today. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for keeping the hope alive. Yes, all the way from Miami.
Shout out Miami. And is Miami in the house? Florida in the house? We see you. Give it up one more time for our dear comrade. So the steering committee and our peers from St. Louis have talked and have decided y'all have been working so hard that you might need a minute. Fair? Yeah, how about we take 5? And we'll see you back here for the St. Louis panel. Thank y'all.
All right, we're gonna start back up in about another minute or so. So start finding your seats. Please. Pretty please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Please find your way to your seat. We're about to get started. I don't know what you heard about folks from St. Louis, but you know, we're serious. So let's have a seat. We're not that serious, but that was great. That was great. We're gonna get started with our, I'm sorry, how y'all doing? My name is Kayla Reed. I use the she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of Action St. Louis. Thank you. This is my co-partner in all things, Blake Strode, the Executive Director of Arc City Defenders.
Hello again.
And we're gonna get started. And I guess we can make that song walk-up music. So we are, that was too much. It was too much of a podium for me. We're gonna get started. We co-host a podcast. It's called Under the Arch. So welcome to St. Louis. Yes. You are now under the arch. You are safe. This is a great Black ass city. And we're thrilled that you're here. The Under the Arch podcast was started 3 years ago.
Yeah, pre-COVID times. And one of the things we like to do on Under the Arch is we like to bring on folks to talk about what's happening in our communities. The tagline for our podcast is we talk to, no, we're fighting. What's the tagline, Kayla?
I don't
it's been a while. See, where's our team? Usually we have a team.
Podcast where we address the issues facing our city and talk to the folks
people fighting to transform them.
Yeah, it's something like that.
There it is. Clap it up.
Yeah,
there it is.
It's usually on a piece of paper. It's a great podcast, but we've been here all day. So listen, before we get started, we felt like how many of you all traveled to St. Louis for this conference? Right? How many people are from St. Louis? Make some noise.
Squad.
Yeah, so before we get started with our panel, we felt like You heard about what we've been doing here. We're going to talk about it some, but we felt like our mayor should welcome you to the city. And so if you didn't know, in 2021, St. Louis elected the first Black woman to ever hold the seat of mayor. And she's going to come she's going to come welcome you to the city. And then we're going to have a couple questions with her. And then we'll bring up our local panel. So introducing Mayor Tashara Jones.
Y'all out here playing the jam today. Good afternoon. I am Mayor Tashara Jones. I use the she, her, hers pronouns, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to St. Louis. It's not every day that I get to speak and stand and speak in a room where I feel so much power. You are leading the way in racial equity and working to right historic wrongs and building political power. And that's a big task. You understand how the problems that hold Black communities back from liberation trace back hundreds of years to when our ancestors were first forcibly brought to this land. Most people when they think of St. Louis, they think of the Gateway Arch, like the Under the Arch podcast. Or maybe they think of toasted ravioli. If you haven't tried some, please try some while you're here. That's pretty typical. But what I love most about St. Louis is rooted in its history. St. Louis has quietly led on civil rights for centuries, all the way back from our founding in the 1800s to present day. From Dred and Harriet Scott suing for their freedom, to the civil rights movement, to the modern fight to make sure that Black lives matter, our city has a long history in the fight for justice, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. And that spirit continues today to animate our city. It's why local activists and leaders mobilized to close the workhouse, and today that entire facility still sits empty. And my administration is committed to working with the community on how to ultimately reimagine that site. It's also why I worked with the Board of Aldermen to bring St. Louis's marijuana laws in line with the state's, because we shouldn't be arresting people for smoking a little bit of weed while billionaires make bank on it. And it's why I want St. Louis to be a leader in alternative response, connecting the right professional to the right call to reduce St. Louisans' contact with incarceration and with police. Police respond to far too many calls and situations that they are not equipped to handle. And I want to explore how we can use social workers and other civilians to step into certain roles where an enforcement response is not needed. My administration reallocated $4 million in vacant police positions to invest in social workers and other victim support services. And when we did that, we found that it saved the city millions of dollars. It saved it with two programs, with our Cops and Clinicians program and with our 911 diversion program that has saved thousands of hours and again, millions of dollars. But even then, the vibrant, forward-thinking spirit of our city, St. Louis has so much to offer. And I want you all to make sure that you have some fun while you're here too. St. Louis is home to a vibrant art scene. Our National Blues Museum offers history and live blues music. Our parks are bustling with renditions of Shakespeare plays that you will find bands doing covers of your favorite artists in our local lounges. Our art museum holds a wide collection of art ranging from art legends like Picasso to my personal favorite, Kehinde Wiley. Our local restaurants make St. Louis a foodie destination. From barbecue, which I know is a fighting word for some of y'all if y'all are from Kansas City. Yes, St. Louis barbecue is better than Kansas City. I saw it on the news and the news said so. And we truly have it all. Or you can watch a Cardinals game and grab a drink at Ballpark Village, which is just a few blocks away. No matter what you're into, St. Louis has something for everyone. So welcome to the Loop. Thank you all for your service to build political power. Have a great time, and God bless you all.
All right. Well, that was a welcome plus. You got it all in there. We're just gonna ask while we have the good man. Let's try to take this. We're just gonna ask a couple of questions, and then, as Kayla said, transition into some panel conversations. Actually, a quick video before even we do that. And one of the things we wanted to ask is that the theme of this conference is Lawyering for Liberation. The theme of this session and the upcoming panel is St. Louis is Resistance. And so you spoke to this a little bit in your intro there, but for people watching in the room and virtually across the country, what should they know about those themes, about that theme of liberation, about the theme of St. Louis as resistance and the history of resistance in St. Louis? Just share with the audience a little bit
So
how you think about that.
when I spoke about Dred and Harriet Scott, a lot of people think that that was the only case that moved its way through our courts. And actually, they were one of hundreds of slaves that sued for their freedom in the years leading up to the Civil War. So in St. Louis courts, you could sue for your freedom. Black slaves could sue for their freedom, and about 40% of them won through an all-white judge and all-white jury, because back in the day, we had a law on our books in Missouri that said once free, always free. And so Dred and Harriet Scott sued under that statute because their owners had taken them to a free state, Illinois, and then they had come back to Missouri, and they sued under that statute. They actually won initially, but their owner then appealed it, and that's how those appeals went directly all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then we had Judge Taney's decision or his opinion, which we know he got it wrong.
Yep. Saw my name right there. So we're going to show a clip of a video that we had with Congresswoman Cori Bush. We're going to show a part of it. And in that, we asked her about how she defines accountability, how she works with community, works with movement. And then we just wanted to ask you the same question. How do you define accountability? How does your administration strive to be accountable to the movement and the larger community?
Thank you for joining us this morning, but this evening when the viewers will be watching Congress.
Can we press? Thank you. Going to ask the mayor that question. Then we're going to ask the Congresswoman on the TV that question. Mayor Jones.
How do we define accountability?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the, I guess when I got elected, I also gained a nickname called the People's Mayor. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of decisions that we make, we take those decisions to the people. We believe that those who are closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. And so with our, we received $500 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds, and we took those decisions directly to the community. We had town halls, we had surveys, we had roundtables asking people what they wanted to see and how they wanted us to spend that money. And then that directed what we put into our legislation to then get passed through the Board of Aldermen. And a few things rose to the top, more affordable housing options, taking care of our vacant buildings, direct cash payments to people, which we did, and then also opportunities for our children. So we are about 80% through with the first tranche of money, which was about $250 million. And we're about to introduce legislation for the second tranche, probably in September.
All right, Mayor Jones, thank you. I know we could ask you a lot of questions, but we appreciate you taking some time out of your day. We know how busy you are to come welcome folks to St. Louis. Please give it up for the mayor again for being here today.
Thank you.
And now we're going to transition to a quick video of a conversation we had with Congresswoman Cori Bush. Yeah, and as we do that, our next panel is going to start coming to the stage.
Thank you for joining us this morning, but this evening when the viewers will be watching. Congresswoman Cori Bush, how are you?
I am well and ready.
Yes, we know, always ready because we're from St. Louis.
Right.
This is the opening panel on St. Louis as a site of resistance. Can you just take a moment to welcome folks to our city, to our home, and maybe share one thing that you think this group of folks should know about St. Louis?
Yeah, welcome, welcome, welcome to our lawyers, every single one from around the country. Thank you for coming to St. Louis. It is the best place if you want food, if you want meat, if you want just to feel, to get that warmth of your Blackness. It is a place where you can come and just, and just have all of the things. I love my home, and it's where I go and get built up to be able to come back to Washington and fight.
You know, you were elected 2020, this historic moment, right, where we had the summer of uprising after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and then we saw that energy fuel voters, first-time voters and frequent voters to show up and really usher in what folks call a, quote, blue wave, right? Where the Democrats have taken control of the Senate, the House, and the White House. And in these 2 years, the political climate is dramatically shifting and extremely hostile to our folks, right? With the decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court, policies that we're seeing introduced on the state and in some local places. And so even after that historic elections, the right is still gaining traction and political wins. So how is that climate impacting Congress, and what are you doing to address that reality?
What happened in 2020 to all the millions of people who were out on the streets? If we just take that one year, the millions of people that were out on the streets, fighting for accountability. I can't even call it justice, because justice would mean that George Floyd would be alive and Breonna Taylor would be alive, but fighting for that accountability and fighting for change. And then the very next year, in 2021, there were only 15 days in that year where police didn't kill someone. Only 15. 2021 was the year and I know I'm preaching to the choir on this one, but when I think about how 2021 was the year that saw the most police murders since that had been being recorded, right after millions of people took to the streets. But getting people to understand and see that as big of a deal, that's been another thing that I personally fight with in Congress, because I'm always talking about St. Louis is number one for police murder. St. Louis is number one for homicides, per capita. St. Louis is number one for the murder of children, and trying to get people to understand, like, this is the real thing, and this is something that we need to focus on, but everybody comes in with their own priorities. And so that's the issue. Somebody's priority is climate change first, and only a particular sector of climate change. Somebody else's is, it's just so many different, those are the barriers. But for us, the way to combat that, for lack of a better word, the way to push past that is to continue to be vocal, but to also work with the groups that are able to work with us and back us up and help us to push past, so that people hear our voices.
Yeah, you anticipated my next question there at the end, because you used the word that I want to follow up on, which is accountability. And I've heard you say many times that you are accountable to people of St. Louis, and said this in response to people pushing back against some of the things that you're doing, that I'm accountable to my constituents, I'm accountable to people in St. Louis. And also as people who run organizations and are in relationship with a lot of organizations really committed to movement, we know that you and your team have also really develop relationships and practices of checking in with folks in St. Louis about the work that you're doing. And so I would just love to hear you describe what accountability means to you as an elected official.
Right. I ran for this seat to bring St. Louis to Congress. Like that was my thing. I wanted St. Louis to be seated in Congress. And I remember just being so many days being out on the street or organizing, you know, different actions that we would have, and just the different groups and organizations and individuals that were doing such amazing work that people didn't know about, or such a on a large scale, such amazing work that they just needed the funding to be able to scale up, or they had these amazing ideas, but nobody was listening to them and nobody was checking for them. And so I want to be able to bring that to the forefront. I want to make sure that it's not only those that get to be on television that are the voices, because oftentimes those aren't the folks that are in our communities right on the street. You know, oftentimes that's not what we see in our communities. We see folks like Action. We see, you know, these other groups that's out always doing the work, that's out always making sure that the voices of so many of us that just have felt like nobody cared, where we were underrepresented or where there was no representation at all, like that change was happening through those groups or individuals. And so that accountability for me is making sure that we continue that, like, because that is what I wanted to see while I was running. That's what I wanted to see before I ever thought about running, when I was out on the street. And so bringing that, pulling that forward is really important to us. And so that's something that we won't lose. The other thing is, I'm in Congress, I am in hearings, I'm in briefings, I'm in classified meetings, I'm in, you know, so my days are very, very long, and it's a lot of me being away from the community. And so being able to keep that that connection with the community, because I don't always know what's happening other than the phone calls I get or the messages. So this is another way, because the folks that are on the ground, we need to be able to make sure that they're informing those of us that have the power of the pen and the power of the purse.
Yeah, and I want to give concrete sort of examples of that, what that has felt like as organizations on the ground, working with our congresswoman, our mayor, you know, members of our legislative body here, is when you were sleeping on the steps of the Capitol, we were in communication with your team and flanking that demand locally, right? And pressure and communicating to the judges that they had the jurisdiction to extend the moratorium locally, and explaining what was happening to residents, right? To our community members, right? When you introduced the People's Response Act, you did that in coalition with organizations like the Movement for Black Lives. You were at the table with groups like SC Justice and Action St. Louis. And so I think saying that relationship of understanding what's moving, we just had a reparations event on Juneteenth where we talked about what reparations, the context of reparations in the national conversation, but also what it really means for Black folks whose families migrated to St. Louis in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and lived in North City and have experienced a completely different set of outcomes based on their race and their location, right? And so how policies impact us. And just that communication has allowed us to have a stronger voice, right? Has brought people into the work of making policy, and has, I think, really strengthened to other people what an accountable relationship can look like between elected officials and folks on the ground. So that's really exciting. Our last tenant meeting, one of your staffers came to talk about housing. And when you have that sort of relationship, it definitely can bring people into understanding the power of their vote when they see their elected official responding to their needs.
We didn't know when it was going to end. Okay. Welcome back. Imagine it was a commercial and the screen panned and we just changed clothes, but that happened yesterday. And because Congresswoman Bush is in DC at this moment. So the entire conversation is about 25 minutes. It will be available on the conference website. We asked several more questions to Congresswoman Bush, and yeah, so check that out when you have some time. And now we are here with we've talked to a couple of elected officials back to back, but let's talk to the folks who really make it work, you know. And so we have a panel of local, you know, badasses is really the only word I could say. And so I'm going to read some of their bios. I'm going to start with Mike Jones. Who? Yeah, he was Mike Jones before that, Mike Jones, but we still got to do it. So Michael, but we call him Mike Jones. Public career spans 4 decades. Until his retirement in January of 2015, he served as senior policy advisors to St. Louis County executives. Prior to joining that administration, Mike was the executive director of Greater St. Louis Regional Empowerment Zone. He served St. Louis's second Black mayor, Mayor Clarence Harmon, as chief of staff and deputy mayor for development from 1997 to 2000. In the 80s, he was a member of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen and was executive director of the St. Louis Housing Authority. In 2011, then Governor Jay Nixon appointed Mike to the Missouri State Board of Education. He is one of 8 members responsible for statewide educational policy. His private sector experience includes executive director of the Herbert Hoover Boys Club and regional manager of corporate affairs for Anheuser-Busch. In that role, he was responsible for community relations. Jones currently writes commentary for and serves on the editorial board of the St. Louis American, the Black paper in our region. He's a St. Louis native, graduating from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Mike Jones. Who? Next to Mike, and I'm going to just say the name and let the applause erupt because that is what's due. Jamala Rogers, known as Mama Jamala. Is the co-founder of the Organization for Black Struggle, is a revolutionary writer, organizer, has spent most of her life challenging the criminal industrial complex, focusing on police violence, prison reform, wrongful convictions, and the death penalties. She's associated with many exonerations of several Missouri men and women. She's a featured columnist for the St. Louis American and an author of the best of the Way I See It and Ferguson is America, Roots of Rebellion. Mama Jamala. And last but certainly not least, we have Tef Poe, born Kareem Jackson. Absolutely. Is a St. Louis native who is currently the National Field Director for Black Men Build. Shout out to the Nines. Can I say that? Okay. Is a writer, a performer, an author, and an organizer who has been on the front lines of this movement here locally before Ferguson, during Ferguson, and well after. So that's Tef Poe. Shameless plug, Tef is performing at Action's birthday party tonight. If you got your ticket, raise your hand. It's not enough hands raised. Buy your tickets. The bar is open on us. Well, not on us, on Marbury in the conference. So shout out to Law for Black Lives. But yeah, a phenomenal artist and writer. So thank you all for joining us today, and we'll get started with the questions.
All right, I'm very excited about this conversation because there's greatness on this stage, no question. And bios don't do people justice. So all of you have been deeply immersed in movement politics in different ways over the course of your lives. Can you just take a minute to talk a little bit about your entree into movement and what your journey and service to movement over the course of your life has looked like? And we can just start. Some of these, I'm just gonna jump ball, whoever wants to get in. For the first one, we'll just go in the same order. So start with you, Mr. Jones.
Okay, thank you, and it's an honor to be here, and I kind of know how Dr. J and them feel at the All-Star game now. You know, I'm looking, yeah, I'm looking out here, and not only was I playing before y'all was born, I was playing before your mama and daddy was born. So, but the game is the game. So, bottom line, my entree into public life kind of started in the 60s. I'm a product of the mid 60s, that entire era of from urban uprising into student activism. And it fundamentally shaped my politics, my perspective. And I would even argue that at a strategic or philosophical level, my politics haven't changed since 1968. Now, I've made tactical adjustments over the last 40, 50 years now, I guess what I'm saying. But at a philosophical level or existential level, my politics fundamentally haven't changed. And the one thing I would throw out, maybe we'll get the chance to talk about a little later. People today conflate everything as civil rights. And there was a generational difference between the 50s and the 60s. So people who were product of the civil rights movement of the 50s generated a different kind of political energy than people who were products of the student movement, anti-war, mid to late 60s. And that created a different kind of urban politician going into the 70s. So I think as we go through this, we need to be mindful that you can't conflate that entire period, because it did do different things inside the Black community, and they had different impacts, all important, but not necessarily the same.
Good afternoon, I'm Jamala Rogers. I came from a working class family out of Kansas City, Missouri. And so I don't mind the mayor talking about barbecue because I don't eat meat. But it was very humble beginnings there. And like Mike, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And so during the rebellion that we had in Kansas City in 1968, it really crystallized for me what kind of government that we were going to be faced with. Because this is a government that came into our community with Army tanks. And unlike Ferguson, where there were no casualties per se, there were a number of folks who were killed in the streets of Kansas City. So that was a pretty rude awakening for me. But I went on to college and met folks from all over the country who were also had been politicized in very different ways, but nonetheless. And so we all converged in the Black Student Organization. After that, I came to St. Louis, where there were a number of people that was forming an organization called the Congress of African People. Hey, hey, Jaribu. So, and so the reason I lift that particular organization up, because that's where I got cut my teeth on organizing, and had some of the greatest teachers to help me understand that process and why it was important, and why myself as a young person at that point with neither chick nor child should be all over the place learning how to liberate our people, and I did. So like Mike, I too have been on a basic trajectory, politics basically the same, strategy and tactics might change. And I played a lot of different roles in the movement. But the one I'm trying to play now is one of being a village mother and mentor, but somehow I never get to do that. Folks still want me to organize, which that is my passion, and that's in my DNA, and that's where my heart is. But at a certain point, the kind of accumulation of lessons that you learn, there needs to be a way to share that in ways that people understand and appreciate. So that's really where I'm trying to ground myself right now. And here's Tepo.
Peace, y'all. Thanks for having me. Big applause to the elders. I'm a descendant of Mama Jamala through the movement, so anytime me and her get to sit next together is always a privilege. We've done this 100 trillion different times in different places, but it still blows me away because, you know, I was one of the little cubs. You'll come in there and be like, you did your municipal work today? And I'll be like, we ain't did no municipal work, dog. But those were the days, you know. But now I got my own organization. I'll be like, did you do your work? You know, so I'm like, you know, it's everything moving in a cycle. But I was politicized through my mother, Pamela Berry, and my father, Frank Jackson, and my stepfather, Anthony Berry. My parents had an understanding that the world was going to be against me. The world was against them. I didn't come from a very privileged background. We was poor. Every Black male in my family in the 90s sold drugs. Every Black male in my family in the 90s went to prison. That's why it makes it innately impossible for me to vote for Joe Biden, because I can't vote for the person that directly pillaged my family. So I watched the war on drugs destroy the Black community in the 90s. I watched crack go from an idea to something that was me being a kid walking around here and not having any idea why we were being attacked. And I just knew we were being attacked. And I was born into a radical dilemma. And my parents told me about this radical dilemma, and then my city educated me about the radical dilemma. So I didn't run from St. Louis like a lot of people do. I didn't get older and learn a few 6-letter words and then get, you know, say I got to get out of here. So I stayed here to actually try to endure the conditions that my people were going through, even though I may have a little bit more education than them, even though I might have a little bit more money than them. I understand that I didn't want to be equivalent to what I call the Arabs in the hood that are watching their cousins be annihilated while they sell bad pork rinds to my people, while they sell bad milk and water to my people, while they sit behind the counter in front like they Puerto Rican and forget they Palestinian all of a sudden. I didn't want to be one of those. So I was politicized by STL.
So we know that St. Louis has become infamous for certain flashpoints in history, in the history of white supremacy and Black resistance. So the Dred Scott case, which we've talked about, the East St. Louis race riots, Shelley v. Kramer, various moments of organizing around Black labor and economic justice, and of course, the Ferguson uprising. What is it about St. Louis? What makes it the place where all these things have happened? Mama Jamala, I'm gonna start with you.
So I think what I have is a perspective of two cities. And the only way that I can talk about the difference between Kansas City, Missouri and St. Louis, Missouri is the Dred Scott decision, because I think it was such a powerful decision for both Black people and white people to be told that you don't count, you never will, and there's nothing you can do that's going to ever change that. Because I grew up closer to Kansas, which was not a slave state, it's just a different mentality. And as soon as I came here, I could feel it, I could see it. It was almost like going to the South where my grandparents were. You know, folks here now won't look at white people in the face. I'm like, whoa. I thought I was coming from going to greener pastures like Kansas City, big old hick town. Now Kansas City is actually larger in population than St. Louis. So now that's the big city, and this is a town. So I think one of the things that I've looked at as I talk about struggle and what's different about St. Louis, the Dred Scott piece is a big piece of it. But it seems like people here, they do slow burns. You know, it takes a while to get angry, but they do. And there have been a number of landmark cases out of St. Louis that went all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, you mentioned some of them, Kayla, but we also had, you know, Green versus McDonnell Douglas. We had Jones versus Alfred Mayer. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, people have been struggling here, but folks, for whatever reason, don't recognize it in the way that they do in other cities. But we have, when you talk to people and you talk to even my elders, they always talk about struggle. I mean, they had individual, this is the other thing about St. Louis, there's individual struggles that don't always manifest themselves in really public kinds of ways. Like I heard about one parent who literally single-handedly desegregated a library so her kids could go. So it's those little things, but when it comes to more organized stuff, it's taken us a while to do that. We had the Jefferson Bank protests out of the 63 that propelled us in a different way, but still, for whatever reason, St. Louis did not erupt after Dr. Martin Luther King's death, as it did in other cities across the country, including Kansas City, Missouri. So then people said, well, what's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with these people here? Don't they respond to oppression? Don't they respond to exploitation? Don't they respond to any of this stuff that the rest of us must be feeling? And you know, I don't always know the answer to that, but I think that people have been able to say, let's work it out. And maybe Mike can say a little bit more about that.
I got a theory about that, because I got a theory about a lot of things. But I think St. Louis is the crossroads of the South and the North. It's the northernmost southern city and the southernmost northern city. And it has an internal dynamic to me that has always been unique. It has the conservatism and the slowness to respond of southern cities without the sense of community and cohesiveness that you find in Black communities in the South, that sense of togetherness. And it has all of the alienation and individualism of northern cities without the dynamic and the aggression. So when you put the worst qualities of a northern city with the worst qualities of a southern city, you get the political social dynamic that becomes St. Louis over time. Now that might not be right, but that's a way to think about it.
I don't even really need to say nothing.
I thought he was about to go there. Okay, that was great.
Just to add,
Can I add an addendum? Can you take from what Mike Jones has said about this mixture and contextualize that into our generation, what that has meant for how we were raised and 2014 and since then?
I mean, when we were out there trying to get Bob McCulloch out of office, right? Man has been elected for 30 years, did not prosecute the cop that killed Mike Brown. I remember my mama texting me like, that's good y'all doing that. And then I keep it real with my mom. I was like, it ain't good that y'all didn't get him out of office 30 years ago. This wasn't even supposed to be my fight. But, you know, so it's like, I understand that this in many ways, this has been a flyover town. And the problem with Black people in flyover towns, sometimes they don't look up to notice that they're being flown over. So you start to think that this is like the pinnacle of the universe, right? The way we do things is the way everybody do things. The way we talk, everybody talk. The way we walk, the way we dress, blase, blase, blah. So as a person who has sort of kind of always been in pursuit of the intangible type of intellectual properties of this place, right? Coming up in poverty, coming up told you can't look like this, you can't do this, you can't do that. I've always been the person that said, why not? Right? Like, it's sort of like being in a small village with the children of Israel and they see the mountain every day and they go, all it takes is one person to actually go see what's on the other side of that mountain. But somebody like, you know, are y'all brave enough to do it? So I think what happened here is it's been decades of delay in activity, not necessarily from the streets. The streets are always active. Crime is misappropriated revolutionary activity. We've been #1 in murder since I've been like 12 years old. So like, we have the aspiration to push, but the infrastructure, the lessons, the institutions, they not here. And all too often when there's an opportunity to place them here, there's a fear from the academic world, there's a fear from the engrossing organizing world that oil and water won't mix. So a lot of times people say, well, how did you get from here to here? Because somebody actually took the time to groom me and spark me and talk to me and tell me the things that I believed in maybe need a little bit more adjusting. But that can't happen if we're afraid to even walk in the lion's den with the rest of the animals.
Yeah, I'd like to add one other additional comment to the context. We don't take a long enough arc in looking at St. Louis, and I try to take it in a 100-year frame of reference, because St. Louis has changed over time. 1900, beginning of the 20th century, St. Louis was the 4th largest city in America. 4th largest city in America. Yeah. 1950, when I'm a year old, St. Louis is the 8th largest city in America. It was 575,000 in 1900, it's 857,000 in 1950. In 1960, when I'm in the 5th grade, it's the 10th largest city. And when I'm in college, it's the 18th largest city. So in the 50 years that preceded me and in my entire maturation to adulthood, St. Louis is a major city with the infrastructure that comes with being a major city. In the 50 years since then, it has gone from 18th to 65th. It's gone from a city that had 850,000 people in 1950 to a city with a little less than 300,000. Those are different places. If you take the 30s and the 40s during the period of the Great Migration, post-World War II, industrial development, St. Louis was a destination city. And part of our problem, I think for me, and this is just my observation looking at other cities, that what cities need is growth. And we don't understand a simple definition of growth. It's more people were born and came here than died and left. So that's what fundamentally growth is. And it's the influx of people in the 30s and the 40s that made St. Louis the city it was in the 50s and the 60s that I grew up in. So I grew up in a major city. There's nobody come here since then. So that means the resources, the energy, the change, because new people change the culture and you have to accommodate them. And that's where change from. There's no magic in Georgia. It's just that half the people that live in Georgia now didn't live in Georgia 75 years ago. They got the same bad white folks they've always had. They just got an influx of a whole lot of different people that didn't bring that baggage with them. So if you take St. Louis and Atlanta, and we always compare them, they're about the same size city. Atlanta now has a couple 100,000 more people, but the SMA of St. Louis and the SMA of Atlanta are geographically the same size. But the SMA of St. Louis is 2.8 million people. That's the 12 counties all around here. The SMA of Atlanta is 6 million people. That's the equivalent of taking the entire state of Missouri and making it a suburb of St. Louis. That redefines the economics, the politics, and everything else. So you got 2 different United States senators from Georgia because of the metropolitan area of St. Louis, of Atlanta, and those fringe areas. And part of the weaknesses in our politics is we're not analytical and empirical enough. So we stay stuck in a certain time and keep trying to fix a problem that is now obsolete, that the time has moved on to something else, and our ability to analyze and make adjustments, we haven't evolved. And therein is part of the problem that I think undermines a lot of the work everybody in this room is trying to do.
And if I may, Blake, just because I think that historical arc that you're talking about, even if it was 50 years for people to look at, not even 100, because sometimes that's just too much for people. But I remember when Ferguson went up in smoke and there were international media coming from all over, why Ferguson, and, you know, interviewing folks. So I would send them to people like Taft, who were, you know, this is their young people's struggle. And so I had a list of folks, talk to Kayla, but after a while they said, no, we want to talk to someone who could give us the big picture, the long picture, because we still don't understand. We understand they're angry, but y'all been angry all the time. So what's changed and what's different about why Ferguson? So I ended up having to write a damn book about why Ferguson. And I didn't just do it for the media, I also did it for the young people because they didn't quite understand the historical context and the historical struggles that led up to a Ferguson. And so when people say, what y'all doing with 119 suburbs or municipalities, how did that happen? White folks and white flight. So then people get a chance to understand, oh, that's what's happening. There's this segregation, and we're hyper segregated here, and talk about the list of murder lists. We've been on hyper segregated list for decades. There is no mixing and mingling here, just like the South. Maybe even worse. But I think if you understand the social, cultural, and political dynamics, you get a sense of the people and the politics of a St. Louis or the region. So I think it's important, and I know Tef and I had talked about like having a political analysis, having a historical perspective. Because if you don't have one, then you're just in the moment, just going around in a circle like a little hamster.
Yeah. Wrap it up. Well, you anticipated the question I was about to ask, which was about, you know, we want to go to the piece on movement and law, but before that, you know, we're talking about the kind of temporal dynamics here and the shifts over time and how the generations approached movement differently based on the context in which they were operating. And earlier, I forget who it was, but someone sort of made the comment that we need to do a better job of doing what you were just describing, of sitting at the feet of the elders and learning that history and being able to really place things in a context. And so in a kind of self-critical moment, the question that's bringing to mind is, what are we getting right about that in our movement spaces, and what are we getting wrong in terms of that kind of intergenerational knowledge sharing?
I'm going to say I got a message from the ancestors about 5 or 6 years ago that changed the way I work, and I'll tell you what it is. But I think our problem, and I'll use a jazz metaphor, because for me, jazz is kind of a great metaphor just to understand the world. If you are a young musician and you are serious about being a jazz musician, you have to have listened to and heard Louis Armstrong. You have to have listened to and heard Charlie Parker. You cannot do what you want to do if you don't know who they are. Now, the object of listening to them is not to play like them, because they wouldn't want you to play like them, but to allow their playing to inform what you decide to do, because the structure, the foundation of the music, the vocabulary, they help create. And if you don't know that, you don't know where you are right now, so you can't know where you ultimately want to go. And I think part of this intergenerational conversation that I'm will always show up for is for me to tell you what I wish I knew when I was you. okay? And that would have made me more efficient in what I was trying to do and more skilled at what I was trying to do. I don't want you to have to live this long to know what I know. And what really got me to think about that, I was down at the Board of Aldermen. I'm saying this because I want to give this brother credit because he don't get a lot of credit for stuff. And I bumped into Jimmy Matthews, and if you're not from here, the name doesn't have to mean anything to you, but Kayla just laughed, so she knows who I'm talking about. And he stopped me on one of his rants that he normally goes into, and I was politely half listening. And then he just stopped in mid-sentence and said maybe the most profound thing anybody's ever said to me in my life. He said, Michael, what are you doing now? I had retired. And I said, hey man, nothing, little this, little that. And again, I'm not taking the brother serious. And then he looked me dead in the eye and said something that was like somebody throwing a bucket of cold water on me. He looked at me and he said, shame on you if you leave here and don't nobody else know what you know. And I said, damn, that didn't come from him. That came by way of him, but that obviously had to come from someplace else. But it really did change how I thought about it. It changed the way I wrote and what kind of stuff I get involved in. And there was a time when our community was culturally and structurally more cohesive, and we had informal as well as formal, but most importantly, informal ways for intergenerational transfer of knowledge. It was organic to the community and the culture. So we didn't need programs. You didn't need mentoring programs and all this other stuff that we got. You just had to go outside and come in contact with your community, and there were elders, not just your parents, but all across the community that shaped and developed you into who you needed to be able to survive America, because that's what the culture was about. And in our haste to be liberated and integrated, now I'll say integrated, not liberated, integrated, we not only physically abandon our communities, we intellectually and culturally abandon our communities. So that infrastructure that built me, and Jamila, we abandoned that and didn't take it with us because we didn't understand how important it was. So I'm blessed to be a Black man who was raised by the last generation of Black men who had to live by it, knew how to live by their wits, and they knew how to hustle. And they taught all of us to hustle. And the only reason they wanted you to go to college is so you wouldn't have a hard hustle. You could have an easy hustle. And hustling is beating the game, okay? And we are the first generation of Black men to live in desegregated America. And we didn't pass on the infrastructure, the lessons that the next generation needed to navigate an America that is changing but hasn't changed. So part of our dilemma is how do we recapture that infrastructure, that culture for 2020, not 1950, because 1950 is gone. So the real question is, we still need it as a people, but we need it to work today, and the way it needs to work today is not the way it worked 50 years ago.
Mama Jamala, I want to come to you because I'll tell this story. I've told it to people like Blake and Tef, whatever, out loud. I worked at OBS for 2 years. It was my first organizing job. And we had, for the better part of a year, came in that post-Ferguson, but we got the COB. It was like lots of stuff was happening. And Mama Jamala walked in one day and said, scrap all of that. This summer, y'all gonna knock the 22nd ward. I was like, knock the 22nd ward? What do you mean knock the 22nd ward? We got like, we at the seat, we telling people what to do. We outside, like we can mobilize thousands of people. And she was like, no, you gonna knock the 22nd ward. And all summer, 2016, we knocked, and y'all been outside? You and I, when you came outside, inside, there was no inside in the 22nd ward. It was just outside. And we knocked in and maybe it was a mountain range before we developed it because it's hilly over there on the west side. But all summer we knocked these doors. And in my mind, post Ferguson, I'm like, everyone is ready for the conversation to divest from police. Everyone is ready for the conversation that we need to reform. You know, back then we had this quality policing initiative and all these other things. And we knocked on the doors, and people kept saying, yeah, you know, they shouldn't have killed Mike Brown. That was ridiculous. But in some ways, we need more police. What we need is more investment in X, Y, and Z. And I found myself coming back to the office like, I really get why she did this. Because for us, sometimes we get into a movement bubble, which prevents us from having critiques. It prevents us from understanding our context and our landscape. And we think about only 2014, not that 2014 was a straw that broke in a long line of straws, right, that created that moment. And for me, that really opened up the possibility that our history is not linear as Black folks, as movement. It's layered. I tell people all the time, Philando Castile is from St. Louis. He's buried in the same cemetery as Jerry Scott, not too far down the same patch of grass. And so over a course of centuries, we're still burying people in the same place. We're walking on the soil of things that have happened centuries apart, as if though they don't impact the next thing, as if though those roots aren't connected. And that to me was a lesson in how to move away from the ideals and the dream of just having the conversation, what it actually means to bring somebody into the work. And so now that's my critique, you know, as a ED now, I'd be like, we gotta go out, you gotta go outside. Like you gotta go talk to people who may not be where we are, but we weren't here either. Somebody brought us in. So I want to ask you the question, and thank you for, you know, making me knock the 22nd ward. But what does our movement need to do right now? What do we need to improve upon? What do we need to actually dissect and open up as a conversation if we're serious about the business of liberating our folks? I'm gonna ask that to Mama Jamala.
So I
I'll
think
come back to you.
the point that you made is a good one, because we get so many messages and so many lessons. And for every one Kayla that said, that's something to think about, there were probably 9 others that said, I ain't never doing this shit again. So, I mean, that it is what it is. Just keeping it 100. So, I mean, I took folks out and they scared, they looking all around, and do people really live there? Hell yes, they live there. So it's a reality check. I mean, come on, working class people. So, I think what we're missing now is just what you said, Kayla. It's a disconnect from the masses of our people to this, you know, nonprofit industrial complex that has grown, I mean, exponentially since Ferguson uprising. I mean, I never saw so much money. I ain't even talking about what Black Lives Matter got, that 90 million. I'm talking about just in general, money that we've never had before that is slipping through our fingers. And when it's all said and done, we're not gonna have anything to show for it, y'all. We should be building national organizations. We should be building national organizations around a national strategy. We should be building locals of legions of people who are being trained and groomed to be organizers. That's what's missing now. We don't have a left pole, a Black left pole, or any kind of left nothing here. We've been drifting just like the Trumpettes. We've been drifting too. You can't be in a society like this and this stuff not come through your pores, right, unless you got some armor. And the armor I'm talking about is your radical politics. It's gonna seep through, and next thing you know, you talking some crazy stuff and people looking at you like, what? I thought you were a radical. So I think, Kayla, to your point, is that we have to stay centered. I mean, the mayor said it best. She's been listening to us. The people who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, not the folks up there in those offices. They got a disconnect. They may have come from there, but after it don't take long for you to not be from there, right? You're in another world, and now you can't even understand what people are doing or why they're doing it. So, you know, you just stay grounded, and always the analysis is being updated based on what you're seeing, the material conditions are, and you can't do that unless you're out there with the people.
Yeah, I want to dovetail literally right into that. Part of Blake has heard me say this, because I'm not a lawyer, but I watch every episode of Law and Order. And there are three things a lawyer takes into court: the facts, the law, and the theory of the case. And the theory of the case is the most important. The facts and the law won't really change. You're going to win the case based on you having the best theory of what the facts and the law said. We no longer have a theory of our case for us in America. So we are lost every time we go anywhere because we don't understand who we are, where we came from, why we're here, what we're trying to get done. And then we wonder why we fail. So the reality is, this is a marathon. And when you're young, and this is what I would warn you against, everybody thinks it's a sprint and they're going to win the sprint, break the tape, and we go free. And then you get a little older and you say, it ain't a sprint, it's a relay, because you start to realize that other people were running before you, but I got the baton and I'm running the anchor leg, and I'm gonna break the tape and we win. And then you get grown and you realize, oh, right, and you realize it's a relay. I was right about that, but I ain't running the anchor leg. I got the baton from somebody. My job is to run the best leg I can and hand it off to somebody without dropping it. Because I don't know how long we're going to be running, but we got to keep running until we win. And my job is just to run the best leg I can. One of the things that was endemic between the relationship between activism and politics, because historically, post-World War II, Black political leadership, all political leadership really came out of protest movement, whether the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, Black student movement. And that, not that everybody was a frontline activist, but those movements informed what our politics was. Post-civil rights, we haven't had, until Ferguson, we haven't had a legitimate mass social movement. So we have not incubated a generation of Black politicians who were inoculated with being adversaries of the system. We produced what I call a whole generation and a half of entrepreneurial politicians who operate just like white politicians, and that you as a community is just one more interest group, and I'm in politics because it's a career and not a calling. And with what Jamila was talking about, the other thing that has happened is we grew up in a community where only Black people could pick Black leaders. Matter of fact, even the most racist white political leaders did not want to talk to anybody Black in leadership that wasn't picked by Black people, because they knew they couldn't deliver nothing. So the whole point is, I need to talk to somebody who you sent. And now, literally across the surface of America's social political landscape, everybody in Black leadership representing Black people in the name of inclusion and diversity is somebody white people pick. So the fact of the matter of fact, about the only place Black people still pick Black leadership is Black churches, because white people can't make you a Black preacher. Black people showing up every Sunday and putting some money in the basket and saying amen. But one of the things we have not had a theory of the case for is, what do we do in a desegregated society? How do we maintain community and still have a coherent sense of who we are? And that, for me, requires us to have an inside-outside game, because politics is really like a hustle, and it's running a con. And some advice my father gave me when I was 12, 13 years old. He said, Michael, if you go gamble, the first thing you have to do is learn how to cheat. Now, the reason you have to learn how to cheat is not so you can cheat people, so you know when people are cheating you. So every game, somebody's cheating. And your object is not to make the game fair. Your object is to beat the cheat. Okay? So you can play anybody once you know how they cheat. Now, America, the myth of America is Jefferson's preamble to the Declaration of Independence, Madison's Constitution. But those are creation myths, and myths are about illusion and misinformation. The reality is America was founded by grifters, thieves, and religious bigots. But that's not the story we tell. And that's who fundamentally has run the country. So you can't change them. What you got to figure out is how they go cheat and how we go beat them. Right. And that used to happen because there was a relationship, and we never had to have a meeting about this, between activists in the streets, in the movement, and Black politicians. And it's like when you run a big con, not a street con, because that's a short con, don't require much. But a big con is an inside game, outside game. And you got to have somebody on the outside pushing one way, somebody on the inside taking advantage of the push that you do. And sometimes your job is to keep your foot in my ass so I can keep my foot in their ass. And as opposed to, but that's all part of the game. And we all understand that, and everybody's doing their job because we're running them while they think they're running us. So until you put America in the right place intellectually, you'll always come up short. Because you're thinking about how to make the game straight, and you ain't gonna make it straight. You just gotta beat it. Right. And if we keep beating it, we okay.
Yeah. Listen, Mike Jones, y'all. Tef, I want to bring you into this because, as we're talking about the ways that our movement spaces become detached from the communities that we're purporting to serve, I think about the work that you're doing as to me, the embodiment of the opposite. I mean, and I'd love to have you talk more about what the aims, the work, the goals of Black Men Build, how you go about doing that work, the kinds of, I see street pickups, right? I see just bringing folks together, doing some Theory Thursdays, but it's all designed in a way to make it accessible to folks, actually meeting folks where they are, but not pulling punches on the politics. And how have you navigated those two things in the present moment when sometimes, as we've talked about, movement spaces can become so inaccessible to folks?
Well, the movement is weird to me in 2000, whatever this year is. I go to a lot of meetings with people that I'm actually fighting that are actually on my same team. So, like their politics conflict with my politics sometimes. Like I call them Asada Shakors, people who do the Asada chant, but if you look on their desk, they got that Michelle Obama book. You know what I'm saying? And that's her direct enemy. That's the person actively looking for her with the $1 million bounty. So it's hard sometimes, you know what I'm saying? So I found myself feeling as if there were a lot of assumptions about people who have a politic that's a hair more radical than the tweet of the day. And I sat back and said, well, maybe I don't really fit into this. Maybe every time I open my mouth, I'm sounding like the psychotic person that's pushing it a little too far. But the reality of it is I grew up with people like this. So I couldn't go outside without having to actualize political line. I didn't just go to a protest. I knocked 200 doors. I knocked 300 doors. I knocked 400 doors. I tested my ability to talk to people through initially registering people to vote at the age of 21, learning about the voter registration process, the verification process. How do they throw out half these cards? Oh, that phone number wrong, they're gonna throw it out. That person don't know they ain't gonna be able to vote, right? I learned all that. I went through that. I went through, you know what I mean? I did all that. I stood in the mud, stood in the fire. It came to a point where it was time for me to build my own organization. I had to lead a nest. Sometimes you reach a point where it's not necessarily that you and the people that were there before are boxing each other. It's just the reality of it's time for your ass to go outside and build something, right? You can only stay on a championship team for so long before it's just assumed that you on the bench with the champions. Like, of course y'all winning, you on they built it before you, of course, you know, you just showed up to the Lakers. So for me, we fast forward, I want to start with the fact that Black Men Build was a call from Black women asking us where the hell we was at. And we had 1,000 different answers, 1,000 different responses, but we had to sit in the room and actually do the alchemy with each other. Because truth be told, in the movement, all the men don't come from the same spaces. We be talking, I be in the rooms with dudes that talking about, you know, we will defend the people, but in their personal life, they've never been shot at. We don't even know if you're gonna defend yourself, let alone the people, you know? But, so I see Black Men Build as a really like a multi-tiered type of thing. And when you're in an organization in the initial stages of it, we only 2 years old. So a lot of people want us to have 500-year solutions in a 2-year container where we're literally building it as we fly. People leave, people come, people go. But so in a sense, we're still assembling what we believe could be the Voltron figure. But here in St. Louis, we're real intentional on how we move it. We have over 50 registered dues paying members. I want to really publicly thank Action STL because we work hand in hand with Action on a lot of different things. I want to thank the Freedom Community Center. We work hand in hand with them on a lot of different things. I want to thank Better Family Life. We work hand in hand with them on a lot of different things. The difference between Black Men Build and a lot of other Black organizations is I don't give a damn about a brand. I'm not trying to brand this to no capacity. Like, I could get killed doing this. What am I branding? I was just outside an hour ago on the west side with my brothers. We were giving out Narcan to people who are addicted to heroin, people who might be affected by the fentanyl crisis. I wasn't in here sucking up the air conditioning. I was out there on the block with the people. We cleaned up the community, gave out the Narcan. We do a mobile clinic every Thursday, and we keep it moving. It's not gonna be sexy work. It's not gonna be glamorous work. I'm not gonna get a Medal of Honor from nobody for that. But tonight, when somebody down on the west side gets sold some fentanyl from a little dude who was trying to pump fake him and finesse him, we just saved a life. We concretely saved a life. And I could live with that. I could live with that. I could live with that more than I could live with, oh, we came out here, yelled at a building and went home. I could live with that more than I could live with, oh, this is the new jazzy TikTok. I could live with that. So the reality of the situation is when you're building with people who have never been brought into a space of love, a space of embrace, a space of camaraderie, you got to be patient. And I learned this not only through my work with Black Men Build, but just a Black man who didn't want to be stuck working at IHOP. I don't really got no college education. Harvard called me one day and said, hey, we want you to work here for 4 years. I went. So came back home. Now I'm back in the hood. I got to have real solutions for stuff that's really going on. I can't sit, you know, I can't just throw ideate Play-Doh at the wall and watch it dry. I got to get outside. I got to really get in motion. So I just believe that what we're doing is something that removes what we call organizational gangbanging. A lot of people coming in space and they want you to prioritize their org. Like, yo, why we ain't get the article? Why we ain't get the interview? Why we ain't get this? Why we ain't get that? I'm not worried about that. I could care less about that. If I came into the movement to build an identity for myself through that, then quintessentially to me, I'm kind of in the wrong business. That's what rappers do. You want to do that, be a rapper. You know what I'm saying? I'm here to actually like try to affect the social circumstances. So I'm one in a trillion of trillions of people who are enlisting in what I thought was the most powerful army in the world when I came to the table and said, can I join y'all?
I'm the MC. So every time I want to answer the question myself, I have to be like, no, you just got to ask the question. But I think it's important that we have this conversation because in the context of the last 8 years, every time we go someplace else, people say, and they say it like this, wow, y'all really getting stuff done over there in St. Louis. The jail is empty. Y'all got the people elected. And I'm always like, why are you surprised? Someone told us in 2014 to go outside. So we went outside. Jamala said, knock doors. So when I went to go build a thing at Action St. Louis, we knocked doors. We knock doors and the canvassers be like, bro, it's 100 degrees. That's cool. Hopefully the person that answered got AC, you know? We got to knock these doors, right? It's gonna either be snow and we knocking or it's gonna be hot and we knocking, but we knocking. And the idea of being in this movement and bringing about the changes, we as a movement, we gotta talk about the fact that we don't talk to the people suffering. We got to talk about the fact that they're not centered in the conversation. We got to talk about it, not y'all. We got to talk about it. And sometimes we get into the space of it being a lot of finger pointing on what you don't do, Judy, what you don't do, Ash, right? What you don't do, Mar, but we are not doing it. A movement is having an argument about is defund successful or not? Did it hurt us in the long run? How many of y'all heard a question or comment like that over the last 2 years? Raise them higher so we can see. We all heard the question. We can only answer, has it been successful if we went outside, right? We can only answer that if we went outside. The toolkits are cute. The movement yellow is a beautiful color, but if we don't make sure people see it, it was about to slip out. If we don't make sure people see it, then we have not done the work of movement building, right? And that's the word. We often talk about us being in a movement, but movement is a verb. We are movement building. What's the action that we're taking to build it? Who's here that wasn't here yesterday? And when I'm gone tomorrow, who holds my place, right? We should be working ourselves out of the job. And in this conversation, in this space, we use that word. I'm a movement this, I'm a movement that. I'm a movement lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm gonna say it like that. I'm a movement lawyer, right? And I was like, what's a movement lawyer? What is that? It was like, I'm a movement lawyer. In St. Louis, what a movement lawyer is, our city defenders, raise your hand. What a movement lawyer is that anytime somebody in the movement or the people that we want to be impacted by the movement needs something, the lawyers move, right? If we need you to move furniture, you move furniture. If we need you to sign in people for the conference, you sign in people for the conference. The JD just literally means I have an available job description. You make it, I do it, right? You make it, I do it. Brendan stood up, so I'm gonna pick on you, right? Brendan is a professor.
He got me out of jail a few times.
We definitely. Brendan is Blake is now, but Brendan was my standing attorney. He was a professor. He was teaching class, and I was like, we just.
Brendan.
I still do, but it's serious. That's the one I'm gonna call. I'm gonna tell you, if I get pulled over by too many police, we're gonna call Brendan. And you better answer the phone, right? But the idea that we have created a container for ourselves to have these conversations, we got to critique that, right? We got to open up the conversation when it's just all movement people, right? We got to have the conversation about who's missing. Brendan, I won't talk about it in detail because I don't know how public it is, but Brendan worked on cases that I was like, I didn't even know you was doing that. He's like, yeah, that's the work of being in the movement, is to go get those who are suffering and help them be free. Right? I'm a preacher's kid, so I get churchy sometimes. But it's the work of going to get the people who are suffering and to help them be free. And that means I will do whatever is necessary, whenever is necessary, not just when you need the research, not just when you need the thing, but what does it mean to be in movement? And I think across the generation, across the three of you, you can define that for us. How, like, what is a movement lawyer? What does it mean to be in service of the work at this point in our lives? That would be my question. I'm sorry that I vented, but I long have had grievances with that term. Like, oh, somebody told another person, you're not a movement lawyer. Did you coin the phrase? Like, are you Webster all of a sudden? Because in St. Louis, the movement lawyer deals with traffic tickets on Wednesdays in Ferguson. That's the movement lawyer. Because if the organizer got to go canvas and they got warrants, we got a problem. The movement lawyers hold the jail fund just in case somebody get locked up. They turn lights on when the bills don't get paid. They watch your baby when you got to have a meeting about the tenant rights. That's what movement people do. And sometimes I think we've theorized ourselves out of doing the work of the people. So I want y'all to talk about that.
So I would say that that phrase, that qualifier, is no different than some of the other trendy things that's out there. And for whatever reason, this younger generation has lots of trendy things. Like everything gets changed that used to be a old term, and then all of a sudden it's a new term. It means the same thing. I get that, but I think the other piece of that, Kayla, is there's just a lot of superficiality in our movements. And sometimes I notice the pop culture is infecting us in ways that we don't even understand. And so I always try to have people who have some grace and patience with this younger generation, because look at how they've been socialized in the last 10 years. I mean, that's some scary shit, y'all. So I would say have patience with our young people now who are trying to come into their own, who want to do what you're asking, Kayla, to be of service, to take on professions where we need them in those places. Everybody's not going to be an organizer. I had to tell folks this in Ferguson. Everybody ain't going to be on the streets of West Florissant. But there were people that were playing critical roles that helped us to stay out there and sustain one of the longest protest movements in modern history. So I have to think about each generation and what they are bringing to the table, and for us to analyze those generations and how they came. I was in circles with other organizers and activists, and sometimes I actually EDs as well. And this one told me that they were trying to get young people to do what I had you all doing, Kayla, go knock on doors. And she said she was like almost horrified that a few of them said they thought that was being intrusive. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. Knocking on somebody's door is intrusive. So like I said, y'all, this is some scary shit. So, but one of the things I try to reconcile that is, first of all, some of these folks, there's a class character, this stuff. But the other thing I think is if you think that knocking on the door is intrusive, then you already have a low opinion of the person on the other side. Because what you think, they don't have sense enough to look out the window and see who's there and make a determination, make an assessment of should they open up the door? I mean, what's that all about? So I'm saying everything got to be a teachable moment, y'all. It's got to be a teachable moment. And if somebody thinks knocking on the door to have a conversation with somebody about partnering with them around an issue, I don't even know how you get past that, because you're going to have to talk to people and you're going to have to knock on the door sometimes. And so part of this generation is used to thinking that organizing is on social media. It's not with real people. No, child, you don't have 1,000 friends. You got 2, okay? Let's be real. And neither one of them like you, okay? So I'm just saying that we built for them a fake world and they're trying to live in it. That's not their fault, that's ours. You talking about what you said that McCullough should have been out of there 30 years. Why would you have to do it? So we've created a world where they think fake is real. And so we have to always be there, the teachable moment, whether they listening to it or not. Because some folks of my generation said, these kids ain't listening to nobody. They don't want to learn it. That's not true. It's never been true. When I was a young activist, the people that I was listening to was much older than me. I just picked and chose who I was going to listen to, of the elders. Some of them weren't worth listening to. And I told them that. You ain't got to bow down to somebody because they're an elder. Did they earn your trust? Did they earn your respect? So, you know, one of the biggest lessons I had was from an old soldier. That was his nickname, old soldier in Chicago. Anybody from Chicago, y'all might know old soldier. He took a group of us activists to the lake with a barrel of crabs. Now, I had heard the crab in the barrel metaphor. I kind of understood it, but when I saw it, he made us watch it. And we watched for an hour, and I was totally fascinated by it. Because every time that one leg was just about to get out the little basket, 2 or 3 brought him back down. And I said, now I get it. Now I understand in a profound way. It's not just a metaphor. I can see it, and I can see how it plays out in our community. So some of us are listening to elders. They're just picking and choosing who they want to. But I'm saying have some grace with our young people. They're anti-organization. They're very individualistic, but we're going to have to help them, y'all. We're going to have to give them some medicine.
So here's what we want to do, and I see you trying to get in, Mike. You can jump in, and then we're gonna, if there are any questions in the audience, I know there's been a lot put on the table here. We wanted to make sure we left about 10 minutes, and we have about 10 minutes left to take any questions if there's anything burning out there in the audience. So, do you want to get in, and we can raise your hand if you have something you want to get in with, and we can find a mic.
Can I quickly coattail Mama Jamala?
Yeah.
A lot of times, the youth don't have examples. I never got to see Malcolm X speak in person. I never saw, I come from a city where Tupac came here and they booed him, and they actually jumped him here. They beat him up here. So like this is just a place that just has a problem with authority on a certain level. So I just feel like the way that we learned to respect a lot of our elders was we had to see you catching the body with us. If I'm gonna knock off 100 cards, you better be able to knock off 100 cards. I don't send none of my organizers into the streets to do anything that I can't do or haven't done. That way, when they come back to me and say it's not done, I can concretely tell them I did it before over 100 times. So I know it can be done. So go out there and do it. But a lot of times we ruling from the top down, telling people to do stuff that we have no example to lead with. And I think that's a ginormous problem.
Preach the word. Do we have a question?
Yeah, question.
Getting to the mention of intrusiveness, the way that hit me and the way that things have been hitting me with this conference so far, it's difficult to have an analysis of how COVID and other pandemics are affecting the way that organizing works. But I suppose I wonder, how would you reconsider the intrusiveness comment in consideration of COVID making unannounced home visits intrusive for possibly the person doing the knocking and the person answering the door? And that also goes back to the mention of social media and how that's not a real thing when it has been proven to be a powerful tool for people who literally cannot go outside. I guess I would like to hear how y'all integrate that into your analysis.
I can. You want to go?
I'm the host.
Well, we built our organization during COVID. And it was very challenging because a lot of times we were void of that face-to-face interaction that really enriches the attachment to the person. And over the course of time, you can start to see people develop anxiety with the technology. I also teach. I teach at 2 universities, and I had to teach my students over the course of the pandemic over Zoom, and it was very challenging. But even in the organizational front, our immediate things that I pushed as a field director, I pushed us to respond to was COVID, because I felt that a lot of times in the industry of movement, I call it the industry of movement. I very seldom just say the movement. I call it the industry of movement. In the industry of American movement, social justice movement, a lot of the people are coming from coastal cities where the weather is cool, the people are a little bit more integrated, and the capitalism operate a little bit differently than it do out here. So we found ourselves looking at people who weren't. I felt that the Black response from the, and she hear me say this all the time. She probably get tired of hearing me say it. I felt that the Black political movement's response to COVID was insanely lackluster, because we were dealing with a lot of people who make 6 figures for a living. So they didn't have to immediately be affected by that. A person who got money in the bank, you not having toilet paper is a lot different than, you know, somebody over there in the community that has the harshest infant mortality rate. So we would have been frauds quintessentially to come out as a brand new organization in the wake of COVID and not have solutions, things that we were putting on the ground to get to Black people, resources. We funneled masks from corporations directly to the community. Don't even send them to us, just drop them in the hood. They need them, just get them there. But what I discovered even within that, I said, wow, this is crazy how it works. I got to remember that this is a industry. People started calling me saying, hey, are you getting signups for those masks? Are you getting everybody logged into the system for those masks? I'm like, are you serious, bruh? You want me to put people in the system for giving them a mask? Like, it's crazy. But I think that COVID exposed to me even deeper the gaps of us not being honest about the fact that this is an American industry. Because people out here looking for work, people coming home from prison, people get pushed out of those prisons because of COVID. They hit the ground, they got organizational skills. We don't market this as somewhere where they can come find a job, because we protecting that space for our homie we went to college with, right? So, but they could walk right in here and get busy. They could turn out a whole prison. Lord knows what they could do to a city. So I saw COVID as an opportunity to have those conversations and to challenge those contradictions.
Yeah, I'll just add, I will answer this one, sorry. I will just add that it is not a coincidence that during the first year of COVID, this country experienced the largest uprising in history. People saw the danger of COVID and still went outside. So those of us who understand the danger of not going outside, how could we not, right? If we're not organizing the folks who are mobilizing on their own, the movement didn't turn out 20 million people. 20 million people saw what happened and decided that they wanted to go out regardless of COVID. And the movement understood that if we don't organize, we should understand if we don't organize those folks, then we lose that moment. We lose what's possible from that moment. So I think, you know, I hear the concern, and I'll say this. Action St. Louis was, you know, we tracked, we got van and all this stuff, knocking doors. Action St. Louis was the only organization in the state that knocked doors for 2020. The only organization in the state that knocked doors. We created a path. We knocked on the door, stepped back 6 feet. We had masks that had words on it. We had shirts that had words on it. We tested our folks. Nobody got COVID when we did it, but it was worth it because we understood that if we don't, right? Because now we say we are here for those who are suffering. Well, they're suffering even more. And yeah, I got a Twitter. I got Twitter. 20, you know, allegedly, I don't know how many of those are bots, but allegedly something like 25,000 people follow me on Twitter. I don't care anymore. There was a time that I did. There was a time I was like, yeah, let me tweet my opinion. The road decision just came out. Oh, I'm so mad. But there were people, I was mad. I'm still pissed. But there were people who lived down the street from me who didn't understand that Missouri was about to become the first state to ban abortion. They're not on Twitter because the pandemic has stretched their dollars so fast that the first bill to go was Wi-Fi. They don't got Sprint and Verizon. They got Cricket, right? They don't have data in North City because that area has been divested. There's not broadband in the city to give people access to the information. And so we can't get to them digitally. We got to go outside. And so there just wasn't, to me and to our team, and we discussed it, there just wasn't a way to effectively organize in this moment without understanding the risk. And I think COVID is a risk, right? But we also, in this city, we also deal with other imminent risks all the time. Our office was on fire in December. COVID didn't do that. I would argue somebody that don't like us did that, right? They gonna like us pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. So for me, it's about asking the question, what is the goal? And if we have a goal, then you got to understand, if you got a strategy and you got a goal, then you got to navigate the terrain that's in front of you to get to that goal. And that, to me, is why we have seen some of the most successful things happen during the pandemic, because people in this moment are dealing with crises. How as organizers and movement folks are we not talking to people to connect them to the work? This is when we got to be a bridge over troubled water. And if we're not that, then we're going to leave people in the desperation that this pandemic has created. That's my answer. Sorry, Blake.
So the example that I gave about the knock at the door, that was pre-COVID. I probably should have said that. But I do want to caution us about the impact of COVID psychologically. I know I've seen it on Black folks. We are social beings. We don't like this isolation. We don't like not being able to go to funerals and weddings. We don't like not going to Big Mama's house for dinner on Sunday. So this has taken an incredible toll on Black folks. I don't know about other folks. I didn't know about Black folks. So, and one of the things that I've written about is because of the mental health issues already associated with us, and then the heavy layer of COVID, the rate of suicide among young Black males is disproportionate. Now, I know y'all didn't know that because they didn't even get a blip. Now, this is where social media could come in, because most people don't know that. Most of the suicides were young Black men. I don't know even that we are close to getting out of COVID. I mean, we got the practices down, and I'm like you. I wear my mask. Sometimes I'm the only Black person in the store with a mask on. I don't give a damn, because I haven't had COVID. Y'all tested? So I'm just saying, I try to be an example for folks. Like, I'm gonna still be out there, but I'm gonna practice some caution. I'm gonna have my mask on. I've been vaccinated, and we had a whole campaign about vaccinations because, rightfully so, Black folks got an issue with the medical industrial complex as well as these vaccinations. But when we talked about what the alternative is, if you don't get a shot, you're gonna die. It's kind of like what was happening with AIDS. If you don't protect yourself, and have unprotected sex, it's not that you're gonna get an STD or unwanted pregnancy, you're going to die. So we had to really just bring that message, and we had a whole campaign around it in terms of what to do and to let people think for themselves, but give them the facts, let them know what was going to happen. But I saw that isolation was just terrible for Black folks.
Can I say something real quick? I'm sorry.
Okay.
She just really, well, I've also noticed under COVID, and I'm praying every day that we as people who are addressing the issues, pray that the ancestors and the heavens and whoever you believe in just give us the strength to address it. But in a place like this, it was already violent pre-COVID. And a lot of times we do talk about intersectionality, patriarchy, but we talk about it in a very linear lens. And what we're not doing is getting to these young men. This is what we try to do with BMB. I try to broaden that conversation. So you got to understand that when you want to do a certain physical act of harm to somebody as a man or male identifying person or whoever, that a lot of times we're unpacking these more complicated political stances on things. There's a layer to it, there's a world to it that we absolutely got to walk into if we want to save the youth. A lot of these kids need these messages that are being intellectualized and regurgitated to academics and activists, and they haven't been brought into the worlds of these conversations. And we just can't be afraid to send people that look like them into the room with them. And even somebody like myself, there's a lot of assumptions about Ferguson frontliners. How many people in this room have really had a developed conversation with an actual Ferguson frontliner? There's a lot of assumptions about what we know, what we don't know. And truth be told, those of us who have slept in the jail cells for the sake of the movement, I don't got no record outside of the movement. My record is a movement-based record. That means I showed up and put my body on the line for Black people. So weaponize us. We want to be used. You can write your books, you can do your op-eds, but we need a space to get down as well.
Listen, y'all, I wish we had hours and hours, but and I wish we had time for more questions from folks, but please give these folks a huge hand.
This is Mike Jones, Mama Jamala, and Tefpo. So this is concluding the conference portion of day one. Tomorrow begins at 9 a.m. What time does tomorrow begin? 9 a.m. Central Time, okay? If you came from the West Coast, it's Central Time. I got a problem with the East Time people. Y'all know this. It's annoying. It'd be like 9 what? Eastern Time? That's 8 over here. Yeah. So 9 a.m. Central Time will start tomorrow. Also tonight, who's coming to the party? Make sure you get your tickets. They're $25. It's a fundraiser, so support local organizations. And TEF is performing. There is an open bar. Shout out to Law for Black Lives. It's at Blueberry Hill. If you get in the Uber, it's like a 10-minute drive. And we'll see you in the morning. Thank you all so much for listening, for being in this conversation with you. Welcome to St. Louis, and let's have a good time.
Have a good night, everyone.